YCare International, is that you?
You. Yes. YCare. Thanks, Rita. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hur Hassnain, and I am the Evaluation and Learning Manager at YCare International. YCare International is the humanitarian arm of YMCA, which you already know, I hope so, which is working in 119 countries, one of the largest in terms of its geographical outreach. And I'm also the chair of Evaluation in Fragility, Conflict and Violence, thematic interest group by IDEAS, which is the International Development Evaluation Association, together with my lovely colleague Susan Tamandong, who's going to speak after me. And also I have the pleasure of working with Vijay for Uniting for Peace for a year, which is something I treasure with me, and I will all my life. So for the next 10 minutes, I have tweaked the title of this event a little bit, and I've made it more, Can We Unite for Measuring Peace? So as you know, despite the fact that the international community has invested a lot of resources in measuring peace, but what the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, says is that the fragile states are almost at the brink of not achieving the sustainable development goals. So what we have actually learned from the MDGs is, if you go on the UN website of MDGs, you will find their final report on Millennium Development Goals and how far different countries have made progress on those indicators. So you will see, unfortunately, only 16% of the fragile states could make some progress on the MDG indicators, and the remaining 84% either didn't make any progress or made very little progress, or you will find no data at all, reason being that there was no capacity to measure against the indicators set by the UN MDGs. So learning from there, what we did was we created a whole new goal for SDGs, which is the SDG number 16, about peace and effective institutions and justice. And there are some institutions who are trying to measure against those indicators. There is so people who are interested in looking into data and who are like data geeks, they can go onto a website called sdg16.org. It's a very beautiful website developed by the SDG 16 Data Initiative, in which they have created and collected data from a range of countries, and you can do your own analysis by selecting different countries and comparing them. Yeah, I mean, talking about measuring peace, it's not that easy. It's inherently political. Peace has multiple definitions. There are different perspectives on peace. Peace is different, perceived differently within and across countries. If you go to one place, they will give you a different definition of peace, and if you go to another place, for them the peace will be something else. Different actors working in or outside the country have different interests, and they want to measure peace differently, their own ways or their own indicators. And above everything, data that comes from any region is not neutral, and a reason being that as human being, as institution, everything, we are all biased in our own ways. So I mean, that makes it very complicated to measure peace. I don't know if you have heard the example of in South Sudan, there was an ethnic group which was hiding from the government of South Sudan in the north, and one NGO who wanted to help that particular ethnic group went to the UN, because the only way to access that particular area was through a UN flight. And UN certainly has to get permission from the government to get access to that particular region. And then when UN stated that we want to, I mean, of course they had to present why that NGO wanted to go there. So before the NGO reached there, the government was there and that group was vanished. So the question is, who can you trust in sharing or collecting data? So if we are to measure peace, we have to work together. We need to unite for measuring for peace. And we mean, there are certain actors. There are the government, national statistical offices themselves. As you can see, there are a lot of actors who are collecting data from different countries, conflict-affected countries. That includes the national universities, the academia, local think tanks, newspaper, private sector. There are international NGOs who are working in these countries who are collecting data. There is, of course, UN and different bodies. But the problem is we are not sharing data with each other. So what's happening is we're causing more research fatigue. We're asking them the same question. We are investing a lot of money, but that is not being used to come with a good conclusion or solution for these people. So what I have come up with is 5 short steps for measuring peace. Number 1 is need for new indicators for measuring peace. What Jeremy was referring a while ago was more about behavioral change, which is at the moment missing in the UN SDG 16 indicators. Unfortunately, it's very quantitative. And for example, one of the 16.1.1 indicator is about number of homicides. So yes, you can measure number of homicides. I'm just saying that. Governments doesn't have access to all the locations, specifically conflict-affected locations. If you take the example of Pakistan, the tribal areas, the government doesn't have presence and they cannot collect data from there. DRC, Eastern DRC, government doesn't have much resources to gather right data from there. Similarly, in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan or the north of Central African Republic, how can they collect data? But still, the perception around people's perception around what peace is, that takes precedence. So what I was mentioning was we need to come up with some sort of qualitative indicators, as Jeremy was mentioning. There is an initiative called Everyday Peace Indicator. They have started working on this, so we don't need to develop something from scratch. So again, people who are interested, they can Google Everyday Peace Indicator. So what they have done is they piloted Everyday Peace Indicators in Afghanistan, which is more about people's perception of peace rather than number of homicides. For example, if you say number of homicides, increase in number of homicide doesn't mean it is violent. It doesn't always mean it's violence, or decrease in homicide doesn't mean it is peace. It could be other reasons. Maybe the institutions are totally broken, or the data is not passing through different institutions to report on. So yes, going back to the qualitative measurement or qualitative indicators, everyday peace indicators. One of the example that came from the pilot testing of everyday peace indicator in the north of Afghanistan was about a woman saying that if the local shop in her village is open during the right after the evening prayer, which is around 5-6 p.m., that means peace to her. Or if she could go out at after when it is dark, that means peace to her. People's perception of peace. But it would be quite difficult to consolidate, but this is what measuring peace is. Number 2 is importance of gathering and managing data well. So if we come back from Clive's time machine in 2030 and today's time, at the moment the countries that are affected or by conflict or that are war-torn, unfortunately, they don't have right institutions to build the capacities of people to count, measure on these indicators. We may have come up with beautiful indicators and SDG 16 that's so colorful, but at the end of the day, it is the state who is going to measure. It is the people who are there who are going to report on those indicators. So we need to build that capacity within the country so that the national statistical offices could gather the data, could run surveys that are reliable and trustable. So again, for that we need to again unite and work together. Number 3 is we need to connect official and non-official data sets. As I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of institutions, there are a lot of actors who are gathering data. I mean, there are the local universities, for example, in Afghanistan, there's Kabul University, there's Pakistan, there are a variety of universities. In DRC, there are a lot of institutions. They're all collecting data, there are researchers. There are local NGOs, there are international NGOs, like for example, I work with Oxfam, War Child, and a lot of our colleagues, and you guys have as well. So we are all there, and different bodies, I won't call all the names, but we're not sharing the data with each other. Why? Because we don't have trust, and they're very sensitive data. So we don't know how to create that platform where data can be shared. I mean, of course, there are a lot of resources involved in gathering data. There are a lot of methodologies and experts. I mean, Sue is going to talk more about it after me. I mean, she's the expert. And then also sharing data on SDG indicators. SDGs and measuring SDGs is not only the response. Yes, I'm really sorry. I mean, that's yes, Sustainable Development Goals. It's set by the United Nations. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and then all those goals have different indicators and targets. And indicators are targets are the milestones. For example, SDG 16 is is about peace and inclusive institutions and justice. So they have the maximum targets out of all the rest of the goals. So one of the example of indicator is that they say reduction in the number of homicides in a country. So they have those kind of milestones. I really apologize. I mean, on that. Anybody has any question on SDGs, or is this okay? Great. So yeah, it's basically the United Nations who came up with this with a lot of different countries. So yeah, for measuring peace or measuring these indicators, it is not only the responsibility of the United Nations or the organizations who are associated with them, but all institutions or all actors who are working in peace and in peace promotion or working in conflict and fragility arenas should also start reporting on SDG indicators, or at least start thinking about it, so that we create a collective platform. And then the final one for me is a platform for peer-to-peer learning, and this is exactly what we are doing today. We all gathered here. And thank you very much, Vijay, for organizing this platform. So to come together, share our learning, discuss about what we are doing, share what our successes were, what our failure were, and so that, yes, we can unite for peace. And thank you very much.